Are we back? Question mark. Let me take a look at restream.io again. Let me double click this. Let me go to this. Let me copy this link. Let me paste it here. Looks like a different one each time. And I do believe everything should work this time. And what I don't know, aha! So the stream is back. He asks, hopefully. Back on Twitch. Great, 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 great. So I don't know if we're back on the others. This is a new learning experience. So if anybody's wondering what happened was, while Riley was talking, I tried to export a slight tweak on his audio on the board. And boy, oh boy, did the system not like that. That was a bad idea. Whoops. Now we just got to see if... Here, I'll text Riley. Let him know if we're back. There we go. Riley. Back. Oh. There he is. We got it. Okay. Are you able to hear me?
I sure am.
Okay. So what happened was...
I broke it, Brian.
No, I know. You did. I would expect nothing less. It worked out great. So let me just verify that we're live on YouTube again. Yeah. But meanwhile, you were breaking down kind of the current meta of what...
Brian.
No. Okay, great. We are live. Awesome. What is the current meta in goal setting?
I'll put it this way, because it's often trite or like common advice. Most everyone has heard some version of the SMARTer goal framework, and I mentioned, like, Michael Hyatt is the one I use as planners. He identifies, he calls it, it's real fancy, the SMARTer goal system, where he adds like a risky at the end. You just add an ER. You have to make your own version of it, right? And it's a good framework, and that's where, like, I think, to your point earlier about strawberry.me is having a mechanism and accountability is much more important than understanding the process. I have kind of a hot take, Brian.
All right.
As a nerd, I've done it every year for years. I know you have too. This last year was the first time that I did a more in-depth questioning why behind the goals I was setting, because I was often, what I ended up doing, and what I think most people do, is you set goals based on, especially if you're like a people pleaser by personality type, you set goals based on the things you think you're supposed to do and the things that either your peers or your friends or your workmates, or like what, in my case, like what the Air Force, what professionally are considered markers of success, without necessarily interrogating whether those are the things that you actually care about, because it becomes a much riskier and I think more vulnerable process if you actually interrogate what kind of goals actually matter to me, because you can identify and go through these processes and make a specific measurable goal, but if it's not actually something that you care about, if there's not a deep enough why behind it, you'll be very successful at pursuing things that other people think are good. And that's what I did for a lot of years, which is, I think, trying to like have it all, which is set goals around my professional life, but yet also try to like achieve the personal dreams and desires. But whenever those two would come in conflict, I would often let the former kind of push the latter to the back burner. And that's what I see a lot of. I don't know. I don't know if that's something you've experienced or,
No,
or seen.
I think what it tickles in my mind is, I think of there's a number of workshops I do about building an online community, getting your message out to the world, best practices of social media, of YouTube, of telling stories. And oftentimes the audience are entrepreneurs and people running their hustle, their gig, like the class, for example. And oftentimes in the class that you went to, I didn't have to ask this because everybody clearly had a weird thing that they wanted to do. But for a lot of other folks, I have to ask, to what end? Why do you want a million followers? To what end? And then oftentimes it is very clearly the first time they had ever considered that. They're all like, well, because it's like, okay, if you don't know why you want the thing, then we have a problem. And so likewise, I think
Yeah.
about, I forget which book Plato wrote it in, but he was talking about Socrates talking about how happiness is the only virtue worth pursuing in and of itself. Everything else, you want the car. Why? Because it'll impress the people. Why do you care about that? Well, because it'll feel
Yeah.
good, which will make you feel what? Happy. There it is. And so,
Yeah.
and if you understand where in the link of the causal change this is has a role, and I actually am not very particular on how you adjust the slider bar of justifying what that is. It's the self-reflection that I care about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that is becomes painfully more obvious because that's the crazy thing, especially when we think about, especially for the creator class, doing your own thing, whatever your side hustle may be. In my case, Geeky Stoics. It's there's so many more tools make you more effective at going the wrong direction if that's what you're doing. Like not if you haven't really clearly identified the North Star. So I mean, AI is the front of conversation, but it will literally just speed you up whatever direction you're going if effectively used.
Well, and there's
And that's why this becomes more important.
that mirage happens in a lot of other domains besides AI. AI, of course, is the one that we're all actively learning how to keep that out of our life. But fake work has been endemic to everything. You can go to bed feeling like you've accomplished something because you have a bunch of box you ticked, when meanwhile,
Yeah.
like, and oftentimes fake work reveals itself to this if you go to sleep and you're like, and if I do that times 1,000, what has actually changed? If it is conceivable
Yeah.
to have done today's work times 1,000, and if it is even remotely technically possible that nothing will have changed, then you are engaged in hallucination work.
Yeah. What's that book? It's like BS Jobs.
I
That
don't know this
there's a
one.
whole book on this. It's a whole. I'm trying to remember the title off the top of my head, but it's an entire thesis of this book was in the post manufacturing economy, post war economy, as white collar work increased, the amount of like actual productivity in the marketplace is reducing, and then as because of economic flourishing, there's just these middle management positions of people who just coordinate and send emails,
There
and
is,
it's like a crisis of meaning.
yeah. Well, and I think the phrase is elite overproduction that I heard.
Oh,
Overproduction.
interesting. Yeah.
Uh, production. Yeah. So the idea being, we just have too many people who are competing. Like there is a place for elite production of high end ideas, but if
Yeah.
everybody's doing it, at some point somebody has to do the trades, the work, and all of that stuff. Although even that is a confusing thing because nobody has a clear answer as to which jobs are going to be human jobs 10 years from now.
Yeah. Well, and as a federal employee,
Ha!
it is always fascinating when you go to like you integrate. It's been a hot topic for a reason of like what is the actual effectiveness of the federal bureaucracy. There's a lot of hot takes, many of which are very valid for this exact purpose. But I think it's both a cultural problem that many of us actively experience, but I think more importantly, it's a personal problem because I think the not to get too philosophical, but you had the guy from Geeky Stoics on. I think the whole issue with the post-war economy through the 80s to 90s to now, the shift in identity and meaning went straight to white collar work. And so a lot of us, like me personally, right now, I have a desk job or like I guess a classroom job, instructor now, but We all have these jobs that often that's what has replaced all of the rest of society's markers for where you're supposed to receive your meaning from. So when you get to the end of the year and like, okay, I want to set some goals, the whole like cultural identity around work is what's taken over. And put in plain English, I think the cultural institutions, it's the old book Bowling Alone. It's that has just compounded, I think, as we increasingly tried to swap our work for our meaning when oftentimes it was not designed that way. And I think that's something that has to be interrogated when you're thinking about like, so what do you want when you're trying to settle for what kind of goals? I think professional success and is very important to personally define, especially if you live in or work in a corporate or in my case, even federal position where there's very clear, predefined ideas of what success means. If you get this promotion, or if you achieve this level of income, or if you can live in this particular kind of house, there's just all this cultural osmosis that we usually pick up the markers of meaning and value from without actually interrogating them ourselves.
Yeah. Well, so okay, so man, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. We'll engage in
Sure.
hallucinatory fake work if we're doing that. But I will say that in terms of making your goals, I do like the extra step of asking, and I would say, I I fear paralysis, and so I would tell people just
Yeah,
write down things you want. Write down a whole bunch of things you
that's a
want,
start.
and then
Almost nobody does that. Yeah.
right. And then notice themes. How many of them were really just five things that were different faces of the exact same idea? Where it's like, well, wait, if I had a budget and was, up 20% year over year, all of these wouldn't matter. Uh, so what I really want is blank. And then once you get to the really want, then you need to get to, and I do think it's important to less peg the outcomes, but more peg the feelings of outcomes you want, but then break down the specific actions that are ingredients that are required to do that
Yeah.
thing. Because there's what you can control and what you can't control, right? Of course you can't control the outcome, but you can control whether or not you placed a bet, whether or not you showed up.
Yeah. That's why I'm such a big fan of the habit goals, because I know James Clear's Atomic Habits became really popular over the last few years because it does the right job of like, if you just focus on the outcome alone, everybody wants the outcome. Lots of people don't achieve outcome. The people who do are typically establish habits. That's the whole reason. And I think goal setting, it gets a bad rap. Certainly, New Year's resolutions get a bad rap this time of year because so many people drop them. I think it's still an ideal. I love the new year. I love a new start, an exciting idea of something I want to achieve. But I do recognize, I think, often the idea of creating a smart goal, something that's specific and measurable. There's nothing more specific and measurable than identifying a habit that will get you an out.
Right. Cliff Horn points out that he's constantly halted because of paralysis. This gets back to again a core thing that you can do. I've heard both Dan Harmon and Woody Allen talk about the fact that there is no such thing as writer's block. You do not have physical restrictors on your fingers that are causing them to be unable to touch the keyboard. What you are having is a filter that you have set too high on your quality threshold. You refuse to so much as touch a button or pick up a pencil until you are certain that it is good enough in your head. And I don't know about you, Riley, but I am firmly of the belief that it does not work that way. It does not work that way. It does not work that way. You must vomit something out terrible with the purpose of it being terrible, but it must become external to your brain so that you can look at it. And then as you're midway through mocking it, realize, tilt your head and say, but there is kind of something here. This could be less dumb
Yeah.
if you did this. And I didn't mean for this to sound so gibberishy, but if we replace this with a vampire, then we're on to something.
It's interesting because the whole idea of self-filtering, I think that's a superpower you particularly have, Brian, and therefore you recognize its value. A lot of people haven't experienced before, which is how do you actually be unfiltered with yourself? How do you lower that threshold in a creative capacity? Because that's usually where the inspiration is found. Like as a guy trying to writing a book now. We just crossed 55,000 words, and the only way we got there was by writing about 80,000 really crappy ones. And like my process, I write a lot, but like for this volume, I was talking to Andrew Main about it briefly, and it is like this volume. You just have to be able to remove that filter. And for me, tools like just recording into my phone literally force me there. It's just like the echoing silence of me not talking while I'm refusing to.
Uh-oh. You're refusing to fat finger your way right off the phone call. But hopefully Riley will be able to call us right back. That externalization is so key, and it can begin with something as simple as just talking to another person. On the phone, oftentimes, there we go. That was quite an exit. That was a mic drop of an exit.
I'll call it. You know what? I'm going to shut up at that point. I feel like point made.
No, what I was saying while you were off was, it doesn't have to be on the page. It can, before that, be just gibberish that you say into a phone and then delete. We were talking about the note-taking stuff, about how I write down stuff that I never go back and read any of this stuff. But having done it, it becomes external, and the habit of redoing it and making it external, it could be all the way to talking to a conversation. Call a friend who you have enough credit with, where you could say out loud, hey, can I take 5 minutes and just waste it to see if there's something here? And if you don't want to call that friend, you got a robot friend that's very patient and will let you blather on and just tell you back to you what you just said. And there's no stakes at all in that.
Yeah. And it's the same process, though, even though we're talking about creativity and writing. If your goal, like fitness is always a big one, but if you're trying to lower that threshold, it's the exact same process. It's the like putting your running clothes out the night before. That could be your habit goal. I find like when I've set goals and I'm trying to build a habit streak, the only time I actually accomplish it is when I really lower that threshold way more. It's the proverbial, I think it's like Schwarzenegger's just like, get to the gym. Don't even work out. Just you walk in the door and walk back out. And it can be your goal. And you'll be like,
and if you find yourself failing at that one, go all the way down to put on your shoes. Just actually put on your shoes. That we're getting to the point where you literally don't have any excuse. Like, what, you couldn't be bothered to set them below where your feet end up every single morning? Okay.
Yeah, no, but it's so true.
It's 10 o'clock, and I got to prep for the DC Streamathon. Are you available tomorrow? Do you want to join us, and we can rally troops and write goals?
No, I only constraint tomorrow is like 11:30 to early afternoon time frame. But if you're earlier in the morning or in that later afternoon, I am 1,000% going to hop on, because like I say, I'm a super nerd on this stuff. So I'll shoot you a text, Brian, and whenever you're doing it, I will. Again, anytime we're talking goal setting, I am a huge believer. It's like it is this superpower, and if this is my one parting shot, Brian, it's something that like I remember watching Scam School and being like, oh, Brian's one of those goal setting guys when you're on one of the early streams.
Yeah.
It's this weird superpower, this magic that works.
It is the closest thing to real magic in this planet.
And that's why what you decide to write down being yours, if that's like my one hot take from this brief interaction, and or if you're listening to this right now, that matters, because you will magically be going in that direction. So interrogate that. That's probably my one hot take. Yeah, man. If you're doing this tomorrow, I'll gladly hop on.
All right. Well, then we'll be there tomorrow. Thank you so much, Riley. Everyone go to Geeky Stoics. Geeky Stoics. Geeky Stoics. All right. I'll see you, man.
Thanks.
All right. Man, well, that was all over the map, guys. That was all over the map. But I'm glad we did it. We learned that we can recover a stream after a catastrophic failure. We learned that we could speed up the featured, highlighted. Oh, it looks so much better now, doesn't it? Look at that. So much better. Great, great, great. Which means also that that's another tidbit for the horizontal ones on there as well. All right. Switching over to the DC Streamathon. We'll see you guys tomorrow. We're going to write our goals. See you guys.